Welcome to another In Wheel Time podcast, a 30-minute mini version of the In Wheel Time Car Show that airs live every Saturday morning, 8 to 11 a.m. Central. Celebrating 10 years of award-winning car talk, it's the In Wheel Time Car Show. Today, coming to you from the In Wheel Time studios in Hollywood, Texas.
Right here.
Coming up, Mr. Mars reviews the 2021 Jeep Grand Cherokee. No, not the Jeep. That was last week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What do you got this week?
The 2021 Kia Sorento X-Line all-wheel drive.
I don't know what I did there, the Kia Sorento. All right, well, I made a mistake. Imagine that.
What?
Me?
What? There's
Me?
my shocked look.
We'll have the events calendar.
So
we'll
that's
also
number 4.
have this week's auto news headlines. That and more just ahead on today's In Wheel Time Car Show. Howdy, along with Mike, out of this world Mars.
Yes, he is.
King Conrad DeLong is back in all of his splendid
All
glory.
right. Well, I don't
we
know about
need
that.
more Jeff Zekin. I'm Don Armstrong. Glad you could join us today. Thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And also joining us right now via Zoom is Jamie Sullivan.
What?
He's with DERQ, D-E-R-Q. Jamie, well, first of all, welcome and thanks for joining us. What does DERQ stand for?
Good morning, guys. So great to be back. Actually, it really doesn't stand for anything. It's just our founders are consultants, and they were looking for a unique 4-letter word to have for a website.
You can ask us.
I was just going to say, you're glad that they didn't ask me, because, I mean, I got to come up with some 4-letter words.
Well, but DERQ's a memorable name.
Okay, so
it is,
an MIT spin-off that developed an automated platform that integrates with connected and automated vehicles, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we're a software platform that is focused on collision avoidance as well as analytics and traffic safety types of solutions.
Oh my God! Well, it's way above my pay grade.
And when you said MIT, it's above all of our pay grade.
I went MOUSE.
Yeah, exactly. So, what is it that you guys are working on today?
So ideally what we're focused on is providing, severity levels of analytics around intersections and those kinds of things to help cities, departments of transportation understand how dangerous an intersection is. We all, travel through intersections and go, wow, this is a dangerous intersection. But essentially what we do is we take that data from, cameras, sensors, detection devices that exist at intersections, process it, and then develop, models and dashboards to help cities and DOTs understand what the real dangers are for those, so that they can, put in mitigation or safety solutions to help make it a safer environment.
Are most of the issues when it comes to intersections, are they designed into it by mistake?
Intersections are designed for vehicles, right? And what's happening more and more is that there's other forms of transportation taking place at those intersections now. And so they need to start to implement technologies that are going to accommodate for pedestrians, cyclists, ADA
homeless people looking for free money.
Yeah, all sorts of things, right?
So with that, in some of the data that you analyze, I hear conversations time to time about short yellow lights are more dangerous intersections than long yellow lights. Is that some of the data that you might provide as well?
Yeah, we actually have the capability of, from the analytics side, we then can leap over to actually the connected vehicle side. So we could take what's happening. So think of it as situational awareness of what's happening in intersections. So if we essentially see that there's a potential for a collision or a red light runner or some type of an event, we can then notify signal controller infrastructure and those kinds of things to take corrective actions to make it a safer environment. So, and then certainly, obviously, communicating with connected vehicles to help them take mitigative actions as well.
Of course, when you talk about connected vehicles, everybody's going to say, uh-oh, Big Brother's finally getting into my car. And I'm sure that you've heard that before. How do you battle that?
Well, I think we'll let Tesla and those guys fight that fight, but because essentially what we do is all the off-board perception. So Tesla and the other connected vehicle manufacturers, they're great with the sensors that they have on board, but they can't see around a bus, right? They can't see around other vehicles, and that's what DERQ does. Is we take that data that's happening at the intersection, and then we can communicate that to a vehicle that can't see around a bus and somebody's about to step in front of that bus and right in front of their vehicle, to communicate that to them to let the vehicle know that it needs to stop because it's about to have a collision.
and that vehicle stops, but the guy behind him doesn't because he's not connected.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, there's digital signage and those kinds of things that can be used to for the people who don't have connected vehicles to warn them visually, or you can do aftermarket things like onboard units and those kinds of things. Or ideally, as the connected vehicles become more and more prevalent, then those are going to be But there's a lot of different ways to do it. But, you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, within your plan, is it connected vehicles to the mothership or connected to the vehicle next to you so that we're all talking to each other?
Yeah, so ideally what needs to happen is this all needs to stay local at the intersection, right? Because of, communication latency concerns and those kinds of things. This stuff needs to happen real time, and even actually faster than real time. So it needs to actually all stay local. So, you can, pump metadata and those kinds of things to the mothership and to other things, but ideally, what we're focused on is trying to keep things local and help avoid collisions.
So do you reach out to a municipality or do they reach out to you for this analysis?
Well, I mean, we're obviously from a sales perspective, we're reaching out to those municipalities, making them aware of these types of capabilities, because a lot of folks don't realize that this capability exists already today. We can actually, solve a lot of these problems that, some of the infrastructure bills that are going through Congress that may or may not ever get passed. Have some focus around Vision Zero as an example. And a lot of communities are looking at Vision Zero, but they're looking at more from an education and policy standpoint when they could be looking at it from a technology standpoint, because there's things out there to help solve for those things.
Oh, it's government. They look at it from a revenue generation standpoint.
Right.
Sorry.
So let me ask you this. So yesterday I was getting gas at on the corner station, and I heard it, the crash and turned around. And so, I mean, there was no brakes. So the car was coming through the intersection with a green light. Somebody ran a red light and clipped them. So are you thinking that at some point you're going to be able to help prevent that kind of accident?
Absolutely. We actually, so we referenced the MIT stuff. We actually have some patents around predicting that red light runner.
Oh, wow.
So we can actually identify when somebody is going to run a red light, and then, basically send a message to the traffic controller that essentially, in a simplistic terms, maybe turns all phases red at all directions, right? So everybody's in a freeze mode. So you let that guy who's running the red light clear the intersection. Everybody hopefully stays safe in their positions. And then once the guy's cleared the intersection, you return to a normal phase and everybody moves about their business, right? So we're still, several months away from actually deploying things like that, but the controller manufacturers definitely want to do that, and we're the type of solution that can actually deliver that messaging to them to help them take those mitigation steps.
And that's where the connected vehicle is important, because what you're looking for is driver reaction to the amber light to make your prediction on what he's going to do when it turns red. Is that part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the traffic light becomes that visual signal for unconnected vehicles, right? If a connected vehicle gets that message, the connected vehicle just stops, right? It avoids that collision because it knows there's somebody who's going to run the red light. But the red light traffic signal becomes that visual signal for those who don't have connected vehicles to stay in place.
Because a lot of times an amber light for me means to accelerate.
Well, but like in this case, I mean, it was obvious the guy that he literally ran the red light. I mean, it was obvious. You turned around, and the way the cars were after they struck, no brakes. One had the green light, one had the red light, and I'm trying to visualize what kind of system could actually do that. I mean, you're talking about something instantaneous there, and it'd be great to do it.
Well, you look at...
Yeah, absolutely. And part of what we do is the analytics leading up to understanding, how many people are actually running red lights at an intersection. Some intersections, as you say, when you hit yellow, you want to accelerate. Some intersections have a significant number of people that run red lights for whatever reason. And, city managers, departments of transportation managers need to understand what the larger problem in that area is. That why are all these people running these red lights, right? So there's some kind of a other problem there that is causing that.
And you help them understand that.
Yeah, we help them understand that, and then when they're ready to make that leap to an active collision avoidance solution, we do that part of it as well, because while you're collecting the analytics, that's the core components to make that switch to connected vehicle.
So you talk about dealing with municipalities. What about auto manufacturers? Because that connectability is going to be dependent on their internal systems in the vehicle starting to talk car to car. Now with the automated braking and stuff that cars can do, and then all of a sudden, life changes because
they automatically back up too in the parking spots. And how many chips is that going to take?
So,
yeah, it's an interesting question. I think the autos are focused on what they can control, right?
Well,
and
what they
can control is inside the vehicle. So that's going to be their main point of concern. Where we can help is explaining to government that there are safe solutions out there, and to not be fully reliant on the autos to do the right thing, which ideally they are. But they're always doing things in view of what their technologists say is the best way to do it, right? So you need some standards in place for everybody to talk the same language, and that's all happening.
So how are you integrating artificial intelligence vehicles, cars that drive themselves without a driver? How are you dealing with that and those intersections where people are actually driving their car and running red lights? How is that being integrated into each other?
Well, it's very limited at this point, but what you look at from an autonomous shuttle or an autonomous vehicle that's driverless, right? The onboard safety systems are only as good as what they can see, right? So what DERQ does is we use the infrastructure to become a redundant safety system. If you look at a number of cities have shut down their autonomous vehicle platforms because of emergency stopping. And those vehicles are only going 10 or 12 miles an hour, right? And an emergency stop at 10 or 12 miles an hour still injures people. But when you have the luxury of redundant safety systems, like an infrastructure-based safety system, it makes it a lot safer and a lot easier to avoid those emergency stopping situations, which causes injury for riders. So that you have to take those steps, right? And there's a process here, and it needs to follow a process. We're going to be kind of stuck in the mud for a while.
So do you have any active interactions with government here in Houston, in the Southeast Texas area right now? Where they're listening?
Not in Texas. We're having lots of conversations, but we don't have any active deployments in Texas.
Give us an example of one of the cities that you're currently working with.
So we're working with the state of Michigan is a good example. They went out and secured a government grant to do a connected corridor on the M1 corridor from downtown Detroit to the suburbs.
Yep.
Which the M1 corridor has its, fame as being the first paved road in America. So Woodward Avenue.
Yep.
And so what they're doing is 60 or so intersections to help understand wrong way driver and near miss types of components. So how many times do vehicles have a near miss with a pedestrian, as well as identifying wrong way driver incidents and among a number of other things. So Michigan, as you can imagine, is trying to lead the way in these things, obviously because of the manufacturers and that are there. And so, they're trying to drive this from a safety perspective, but also, leading for, economies, new economies in Michigan, new opportunities and those kinds of things. But, so ideally what they're looking at it for is from a safety perspective. In order to get to autonomous types of solutions and smarter cars, smarter infrastructure, you need to do these types of projects.
Where do you see that going? Is it progressing rapidly? Is it a slow process?
Well, it's a slow process, but it is a process, right? So what government needs to understand is how do they accommodate the types of data that are going to be generated from these types of smart infrastructure deployments, right? So by putting sensors and those kinds of things out there, as they take this data, what can they do with it? How do they process it? How do they keep it secure? And then how do they analyze it and use it for the right reasons, right? So these kinds of things are happening right now. And then you got to then take that next step to transitioning to using that data for connected vehicles.
Now, are you actually putting equipment into vehicles?
We do not, no. So we're just software. We're ideally in the infrastructure side of things. We leave the equipment that goes in the vehicle to the manufacturers, and then there's specific vendors that do aftermarket onboard unit types of things like that look kind of like a cell phone or a small tablet.
So you work within, for instance, the traffic control system?
We would work with within the Department of Transportation's traffic control system and with some of their platforms in that, and then we obviously take that data, And then we put it into a dashboard so that you can use this from a visualization tool and a safety tool that allows you to create reports that tell you how many events and incidents are happening, how many people are jaywalking at this particular intersection, how many people are running red lights, et cetera, so that cities and DOTs can understand what do they need to do to address these problems. And and certainly there are certain parts of cities that are more impacted than others, certain parts of states that are more impacted than others. It allows them to maybe invest a little bit more in some areas where they need to.
Well, and for data collection for you to reach out with an app on a phone, because the GPS data that's on a phone and something that plugs into the ALDL connector of the vehicle, and now you get the vehicle data going through an app, your data collection could be huge.
Yeah, there's certainly companies that are focused on that. DERQ is not. We're not going to get into that data engine processing kinds of things. There's really big companies that have really big data centers that are going to focus on that.
Okay.
We're going to focus on what's happening at the intersection or certain segments of the freeway, highway corridors that need focus around safety, right? So what we can also identify is where crashes are happening, right? So I think people know that most of that data is pretty stale. It takes anywhere from 6 months to 24 months for DOTs to get some of that crash data back. We can get that real time and be able to make on the fly types of transitions for intersections and freeways to accommodate for safety concerns instead of waiting, right?
We have had a rash of wrong-way drivers, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. These are serious high-speed crashes head-on that, unfortunately, a lot of loss of life in this city. How can you help in something like that?
So there's a couple of things that we do. Is there's vendors that have video sensors that can detect the wrong way driver, and then they send a trigger or an alarm to public safety, and then public safety ideally responds. What we do is we look at those incidents, and we're kind of a redundant system to identify those incidents when they're happening and in real time, and then we can make some infrastructure messaging changes, et cetera. But ideally what we're focused on is understanding why they're happening, right? So where on a map are they happening? What times of day, night are they happening?
How do they access the wrong way on ramp?
Right.
Or off
Exactly. Let's deconstruct why this is happening to help avoid it in the first place. But then if it is an incident where there's not much to look at, maybe having public safety deployed in certain areas, on a Friday night, because we're seeing a lot of wrong way drivers, for this particular reason, right? So,
and then the manufacturers could plug into, like OnStar, they can slow you down or shut you down, depending on what the desire is. And would you accept data from OnStar, or is that's too much data for you?
No, we do both, right? So we could actually send data to OnStar to let them know that their vehicle is going in the wrong direction, and then they take the mitigating actions, right? So we don't want to be in the business of changing a street light controller or telling a car to turn off. We don't want that liability. So, but there's certainly those vendors that are managing those assets. They can certainly do that.
Jamie, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Very informative and great stuff on the cutting edge, and we really appreciate you spending the time with us this morning.
Hey, appreciate it, guys. Have a great Saturday.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Man.
You talk about high-level stuff.
Yeah.
That's why it's MIT, but it's also looking at the natural things that are happening to determine what government or what the municipality can do to affect it.
Yeah.
We're on the cutting edge, too. So
it's like, you get on the highway, and it's always a traffic jam at one spot, and I'm looking at, if you turn that on-ramp off, you wouldn't have that person trying to cross 3 lanes of traffic. And I'm sure I see it, but I'm sure that's part of the data that they're trying to collect to avoid that. And then, talk to Don Armstrong. He flies a helicopter talking traffic all the time.
You bet.
He can tell you the bad spots.
Speaking of cutting-edge stuff, why don't we take a look at the events calendar? Because there's events.
You want me to do it?
There's always events. You got it?
No, you got it.
Okay. Well, again, tonight, Nifty 50s in Grogan's Mill in the Woodlands, the Kima Car Meet. Tomorrow, August 29th, Houston Cars and Cocktails at Little Woodrow's with Houston Performance Driving. And then also tomorrow is Lady Chaos Car Crew. They're doing a raffle with a DJ and prizes and the 1-year anniversary of them, and that's going to be at
Who's the DJ?
Fortress DJ Lady Car Crew, DJ Chaos. And that's going to be at Fortress Beer Works. Friday is going to be the Houston Auto Club meet at 4513 Cullen Boulevard in Houston. And then Sunday, September 5th is the Woodlands and Cars and Coffee for a Cause at Six Pines, and that's going to be up Chaos Coordinator, and that's going to be again up in the Woodlands, and that's always a fundraiser. And then let's not forget Woody's Waterfront. 3rd Annual Waterfront Car Show at Topwater Grill, September 25th at 9 a.m. till like 4